Fantastic. 15 years ago, Catherine and I were living in Derbyshire, where I was a curate, which was someone who was a kind of trainee vicar. And I was helping lead the midnight communion service in one of our churches. So Christmas Eve, midnight communion, and a youngish couple wandered into church for the first time. Now, that's not that unusual for midnight communion. Lots of people come to midnight communion services. That's okay. But as I said hello to them and all of that, they made it clear that they were planning to join and stay and become part of our community. And sure enough, over the next few weeks, they kind of kept coming along, and they gradually settled into life within our church community. They did not have very much of a church-going background at all. So obviously, I asked them what had led them on that journey. And they didn't give me all of the details, but they painted a picture of the life they'd led up to that point, which was kind of part of, I don't know how you describe it, the kind of new age, counter kind of culture, community. They lived in a camper van and traveled around Europe, a little bit off grids, that kind of alternate lifestyle. They'd been raising a teenage daughter, and that had been the life that they'd lived. And what had changed, and I'm going to use their words for this, is that within that context, one evening, one gathering they'd been part of, they had an experience that they would only describe as, we had an experience of pure evil. That's pretty dramatic. I didn't ask any more questions. They said, we had an experience of pure evil, and we knew that we needed to make a change in our lives. I mean, it was such a dramatic experience that they kind of gave up that traveling lifestyle, settled back down in the UK, and started coming to church. I mean, that's a pretty dramatic change in a person's life, isn't it? And clearly what had happened for them was that they had had an experience of spiritual evil, and they knew that they needed to seek out spiritual good. That's an interesting story, isn't it? But one of the things that moves people towards exploring faith and church and Christianity and religion all of that is that sometimes as you talk to people, you realize they have had experiences that they can't quite explain, that don't really fit within our secular view of the world. And that's what I'd like to explore this morning. This has always been the case, by the way. This has always been the case. But at every Alpha course that we've ever run, at some point, once people start to feel safe, not week 1, maybe week 2, maybe week 3, at some point as people start to feel safe, they say, oh, well, this happens to me. Maybe when I was young, maybe at a kind of important moment in my life. And it's something that just kind of, they can't really mentally file. It just is an experience that they kind of don't know what to make of. But somehow, back in their story, they're looking for an explanation, looking for reasons. But one of the most interesting things, so we are doing 4 weeks exploring this thing around the quiet revival. Is there a quiet revival going on? It doesn't really matter very much. But one of the things that is definitely happening is that over the last couple of years, I would say the number of people having experiences like that, particularly younger people, has just started to tick up. And I don't really get it. I don't really understand it at all. But it seemed to me that it would be appropriate to explore what on earth is going on when that happens. If you've got a friend or a family member that just at a vulnerable moment will say, well, you know, this happened. They know that you come to church. And they go, oh, well, this happened to me once. What do we do about that? What do we do with stories like that? Maybe it won't be as dramatic as that story that couple told me. Maybe it'll be much more mundane than that. But how do we understand those kinds of experiences? What do we have to say? So here we go. So our Bible reading this morning is the story of a person having a very dramatic, mystical, spiritual, personal experience that set his life on a completely different trajectory. So we're going to dig into it a little bit. If you've got a Bible, we're in Genesis 28. If you would like a Bible to read as we go along, if you put your hand up right now, Adi and Vicky at the back will run around and bring you a Bible. We are on page, hang on, let's just have a quick look. Page 30. How about that? We're on page 30. Now, just so you understand Genesis, Genesis is the first book in the entire Bible, and it's basically split into two sections. The first 11 or 12 chapters are the creation narrative, and the rest of the book is the story of the family, the household that will eventually become the nation of Israel. And it's the story of each of the leaders in each of 4 generations of that family. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, whose story we're about to come to, and then finally Joseph. Joseph's story is the one that kind of takes them to Egypt, which sets the context for Exodus and Moses and all of that. So we are in Jacob's story. Jacob was the younger of 2 twin brothers, Esau and Jacob. And as you probably know, in the ancient world, kind of leadership and authority in families went down to the oldest son. So it should have gone to Jacob's brother Esau, but the God of the Bible is not very interested in those kind of social structures, so regularly turns them around. So from the moment that Jacob was born, there seemed to be a sense that actually God's calling of leadership and authority in that generation was on Jacob, not on Esau, which was one of the many things that created quite a lot of family tension. See, the problem with Jacob was he's not a good guy. He's not a good guy. His name means sneaky. What a great way. Hey, Sneaky. What a great name to give your child. Sneaky. And that was his character as well. That's one of the reasons why his name change later on in his story is so important, because honestly, wouldn't you want to change your name if your parents had named you Sneaky? So that was his name, and that was his character. And basically, as a young man, he kept falling out with his family and kept falling out particularly with his brother. So they got to the stage where he was a young man, and basically kind of had an intervention, a family meeting where they said, Jacob, it's probably best if you move out. So we're going to send you off to your relatives, because otherwise we're slightly concerned that your brother is going to kill you. Not metaphorically, actually literally kill you. So they kind of had a family meeting, and they decided that it would be best for Jacob if he got shipped off to a relative where he could kind of grow into adulthood and kind of start over and mature a little bit. And this story is in the context of that. He has just left home, and Jacob is on the way to his distant relatives where he's going to live from now on. So there's a few things we can see about him. The first thing that we can see about him is that he's away from his everyday. He's away from his everyday. And so often, our everyday, we're occupied from morning till night, and actually we rarely have the space, the mental and emotional space, to open up to the spiritual world. Do you know, it's not unusual for someone to say to me, I went and sat in a cathedral when I was on holiday, and it was really, really moving. And they don't ever do anything about it, but they went and sat in a cathedral on a holiday. Cathedrals are supposed to be moving places. They were literally built to make you feel like that. But also, when we're on holiday, when we're detached from our everyday, often we're just a bit more kind of open, aren't we? So that's right. That's the Lord. It's okay. That's the Holy Spirit calling. The second thing about him is he's away from civilization. He's out in the middle of nowhere. He's got a stone for a pillow. He's not even camping. It's even more basic than that. And he's away from kind of from concrete, not concrete, but you know what I mean. He's away from kind of human architecture and in the natural world. His reference points are the creative works of God, not just the creative works of whoever built the next door house. And of course, he's at a moment of profound change in his own life. He's left home. He's got to leave home for the first time, doesn't quite know what his future holds. Jacob's story actually is bookended by 2 profound encounters with God. One on the way out as he leaves home, and then the other, maybe you know the story of Jacob wrestling with God on the way back. And it's in those, the word they use sometimes is liminal, in between moments, that he has this profound encounter with God. What is it that happens as he lies down and as he sleeps? He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, the angels of God ascending and descending on it, and there above it stood the Lord. And he said, I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham and Isaac. And he has this kind of incredible moment. He has this kind of an experience of spiritual reality. The technical word, if you like this kind of stuff, the technical word is a theophany. He has a visible manifestation of the presence of God, the God who is outside time and space and yet loves to inhabit and meet us in time and space. So he experiences the eternal God somehow in that moment, and kind of his life is obviously turned upside down. And he's like, the thing for him is that he experiences reality as being more than just what we can see and touch and experience. Suddenly there's something more. And maybe he's heard experiences from his grandfather and from his father, but like maybe he didn't really know it for himself. But in that moment, he experiences something more. And for the ancient world, that would have been pretty normal. Everyone believed in the gods, fine. And that clearly says that you're a special person, Jacob, because your God's revealed himself to you. But today, that idea that there is more than we can see and touch and experience is really contested. Because quite a lot of people want to say, well, we can explain everything about the world. It's all either physics, chemistry, and biology. We can explain everything. And we can explain everything about the inner world as well. It's just psychology. How are you feeling, Jacob? Feeling a bit kind of anxious about leaving home? Then of course you would have an experience. How much cheese did you have to eat last night, Jacob? Maybe that's what caused it. What was the pizza that you ordered from the local Domino's like? We've got lots of ways to explain it, but the problem, explain away that stuff. But the problem is all of our explanations don't actually account for human experience. They don't actually account for the lives that people really live. And although we're not very good at talking about this stuff in the modern world, if you give people enough time, you'll be absolutely astonished by the number of people who say, oh, well, I had something happen to me once. And because we don't talk about it, we don't talk about it. But then when we create space to talk about it, you'd be astonished by actually the range of people. They may not have been as dramatic as Jacob, as dramatic as this, but I had something happen to me once. In some ways, I think Jacob is a little bit like our secular generation. He's heard, he's heard the stories maybe from his dad, particularly from his grandfather. Like, oh yeah, my grandfather, he was a real man of God. My dad, ever since the time my grandfather tried to sacrifice him on a mountain, was a little bit more mixed about the whole thing. If you know that story, that is a real story that happened. Okay, my dad, not quite as kind of fired up about it as my granddad ever since that whole experience. But me, I'm not, yeah, I don't know, really. I mean, whatever, maybe once upon a time. And yet away from his everyday, suddenly there's a moment where the God of his grandfather and father says, it's all real, it's all true, and I want to be your God too, just as I was theirs. Now, that then kind of raises a question. Okay, all of these things is like, okay, so people have experiences. How do you know whether these experiences are real? How do you know whether they're good? What do you make of them? If suddenly this week your colleague says, "Oh well, I had this thing happen to me once," you're like, "Oh, how do you know? How do you know?" Let me offer you just a couple of my own reflections from my experiences of talking to people. I think the first thing to ask for people first thing to ask sometimes when people talk about their experiences is what did it feel like? What did it feel like when that happened? What did it feel like for Jacob? Whatever it felt like, he clearly didn't run away. Whatever it felt like drew him towards this experience, didn't it? Because he was like, okay, I'm gonna have to change my life now. He didn't like, I never want this to ever happen to me again. This is absolutely terrifying. It drew him towards. We had a lady on Alpha a couple of years ago that, as we kind of the weeks went by, just opened up a little bit, started to talk about an experience that she'd had as a child. It was to do with getting lost. It was. I won't go into all the details of it. But there was a series of what she felt were quite providential interventions by other people that kind of made sure that everything was okay for her as a child. And when I said, what did that experience feel like for you? She said, I felt cared for. I felt cared for. Well, the universe doesn't care about you. The universe is just physics and chemistry, and immutable laws that have no regard for your feelings whatsoever and don't care about you. So to have an experience that you felt cared for. The Catholic writer Janice Soskis talks about her own conversion experience, one of my favorite accounts of someone's conversion experience. I've read it before. I often read it on Alpha. Basically, the deal is she had a shower. That was it. She got into the shower. In the shower, in her own words, she had such an experience of love that even though she'd been an atheist up to that point, she knew there was a God. And she got out of the shower a Christian and has spent the rest of her life as a Catholic philosopher. I don't know, amazing. Like, I have a shower every day. That doesn't happen to me very often. You'll be glad I have a shower every day. That's great. And it's great. So it's like, okay. But when she writes about her experience, all of her friends are like, what on earth is like, what's happened to Janet? She's gone mad. She wasn't a Catholic. Now she's suddenly like a full-blown Catholic. When she writes about it, she says, above all, in that experience, I felt that I had been addressed by someone to whom I could talk back. There's a sense of it being relational and being loving. Yes, it's grand, and yes, it's dramatic, and yes, there's a revelation of the God of eternity in time and space. But somehow in that moment, it's still personal and loving and caring and relational. And it's not just God talking to you, talking to us. We can talk back. So Janet Soskis has spent the rest of her life basically exploring the idea of a God that can be related to, not one who's just distant and far off. What does it feel like? And then I think the second question is what does that experience produce in our lives? And for Jacob, it produces a profound moment of commitment. A profound moment of life change. Okay, well, look, you're going to have to be my God. He even gets around to tithing. What a good Christian. We like that. That's a profound, you said you're going to be with me. If you're going to be with me, I'm going to be committed to you, and it's going to work its way out in all of my lives, in all of my life. And I think what we see is a sense of each of those people having an experience that is fundamentally safe because it is within the goodness and grace of God. You see, to be people who are spiritual, to be people who relate to the spiritual world, but to do so safely, to do it within a place of safety and love, is to do it within the grace of God, which is very different from the story of the couple that I met 15 years ago on that Christmas Eve. And I just want to say one more thing, and then the worship team are going to come up. I've got to be very good about remembering that the worship team have got to come up. But I just want to say one more thing, which is that if you have had any experience with the New Age or with occult practice in any way in your life, it's not something we talk about very much. There are always people here that would be more than happy to talk and to pray with you, and just to be able to say, I want to leave that experience in the past. I'm a pretty tolerant guy. I'm pretty relaxed about being a vicar. I'm not very much like everything is right and wrong, black and white. Some vicars are like that, I get that. But the one thing that I think is pretty black and white is that if we're going to be spiritual people, people that engage with spiritual reality, then we need to do it within the love and grace of God. And if you have found yourself engaged at any point in your life with spiritual reality through other avenues, we would love to just talk and just pray with you and to be able to kind of close the door on any experience of that in your life and say, look, we just want to be people like Jacob, like Janet Soskis, like these people who are spiritual people, who live within spiritual reality safely, but do it within the love and grace of God. Okay, the worship team is going to come up. I've got one more little thing I just want to pick up on because just to bring us into land. You see, this story has a sequel in the New Testament. And because, I don't know, the next time we're going to do Jacob's Ladder, I don't know if we'll ever do it again. I was like, man, we need to do that. We need to do the sequel as well. So if you've got your Bible with you, I want you to jump forward to John chapter 1, because there is a direct sequel to the story of Jacob's Ladder in John chapter 1 in the New Testament. You see, the story of Jacob's Ladder has got a couple of different dimensions to it. It's the story of God calling Jacob, but it's also the story of how a place becomes a special place. It's the founding of Bethel, which would go on to be a place of worship and prayer for generations. If you read the history of the rest of the New Testament, Bethel, it's not as important as Jerusalem, but Bethel was one of the other really, really significant sites where people would go to worship and pray. And sometimes we feel like that, don't we? Sometimes we feel like there are really special places where you can go in the world, and they're like thin places where you just encounter the presence of God. Like St. Edmunds is pretty cool. I'll be honest there. If it's quiet, you can go and sit in there. Some old churches are really dark. Okay, don't go there. But St. Edmunds is all right. It's okay. You go there and you feel the kind of the prayer and the worship that's gone into that place over 1,000 years. Some places are kind of, you feel the spirit of the place, but in a different way. If you've ever been to visit somewhere like Auschwitz, or if you've ever been to the battlefields, you feel the sense of the evil and the violence that was done there. It kind of soaks into the place in some ways. So Jacob's story is the story of the founding of a special place. And often lots of people always have kind of special places where they think you can go and have a spiritual encounter. But then much later on, in John chapter 1, Jesus was down by the Jordan. He got baptized by John, and he was meeting some of kind of John's buddies and kind of inviting some of them to go and follow him and be his disciples. And he met a young man called Nathanael. So Nathanael's friend Philip brought Nathanael to Jesus like, Nathanael, this is the guy. This is the one we've been waiting for. This is the Messiah. It's all about to happening. He comes, Jesus of Nazareth. Nathanael is like, Nazareth? Anything could come from Nazareth. So he drags Nathanael to Jesus. Let me just read it to you. So Jesus says, when Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. Here's a great guy." Nathanael's like, "How do you know me? We've never even met. You don't know anything about me." And then we get one of the most obscure verses in the entire Bible, where Jesus says, "I saw you under the fig tree." What? No one knows. What did he mean by that? No one knows. No one knows. Like under the fig tree before Philip went to get Nathanael, under the fig tree like at some other moment, no one knows. But whatever Jesus meant by that for Nathanael, that was like, whoa, what? Wow, you're it. You are really it. Okay, we don't know what he meant, but you are really it. And then Jesus replied to him, he says, so Nathanael said, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God, you are the King of Israel." That's a pretty strong reaction to someone saying, "I saw you under a fig tree." Anyway, that was his reaction. Jesus says, "You believe because I told you I saw you under the fig tree." Okay. "You will see greater things than that." Then he added, "Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending on the Son of Man." Does that sound like another Bible passage we've just read? Oh yeah, it does. It's a direct reference to Genesis 28. And what we have is one of the most important shifts from the Old Testament to the New Testament, which is the Old Testament says God dwells in certain places and with certain people. But the New Testament says God dwells wherever Jesus is. Wherever Jesus is, there you have the presence of God. And is Jesus with you if you're a Christian? He says he is. He says he is. So wherever you go this week, the presence of God goes too, because Jesus goes with you. And this is one of the great shifts. No longer is God just in holy places. I mean, we can call the building the house of God if you want to, but that's kind of stretching a little bit. Actually, the house of God is the people as they gather and wherever it is that we go. So, my invitation to you this week, that's Richard, is to use Jacob's prayer wherever you go this week. And Jacob's prayer is like, surely the Lord is in this place and I wasn't aware of it. We're going to lop off the end, because we are aware of it. Okay? And my invitation to you this week is to basically almost use it as an affirmation. We're getting very close to manifesting things, and we're not going to do any of that. But just to say, when you step into work this week, whether it's your spare room because you work from home, sorry about that, or whether it's a physical place, as you step into work this week, why don't you take this little verse with you? Surely the Lord is in this place. As you get home at the end of the day, as you cross the threshold, surely the Lord is in this place. As you go to the supermarket, as long as it's no. I don't even go to Waitrose, that was a stupid joke. As whatever supermarket you go into this week, you step in and go, surely the Lord is in this place. As you leave this house and step out onto the earth beneath your feet, because the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, surely the Lord is in this place. And that doesn't mean that we're all going to start having weird experiences. Maybe you will. Come and tell me next week. I'd be really interested to see. But it means that we start every day, and every step that we make into a new place, we make with open hearts, acknowledging that the God who is eternal outside all of time and space also loves to meet us in time and space. And while there may be all sorts of weird spiritual realities out there, when we meet him in his love and his grace, it is always caring, it is always personal, and it is always safe. Surely the Lord is in this place. If you're able, why don't you stand? I'd love